Hey, this is Joe from Home Studio Corner. I've moved my studio so many times. It's just true. If you followed me for a while, you've seen this change quite a bit. But that means I've had to think through setting up my studio in wildly different spaces 10 or more times. So I've learned a lot through that. So I want to share with you my top 3 tips for setting up your home studio. Tip number 1, when it comes to room layout, find a balance between ideal and practical. Most home studios are going to be probably in a rectangular shaped room. And if that's the case, the ideal setup is to put your speakers, your setup on one of the short walls and have it fire the length of the room. That's the ideal setup. However, you have to take practicality into account. Maybe you don't get a room just for yourself. Maybe you have to share it with other people, and having it set up right there at the end of the room doesn't make sense. Maybe there are doors and windows and air conditioners in play that make it impossible to really put your studio in that ideal spot. That's okay. To me, those are just ideal suggestions. They're kind of the places where we can at least predict what the sound waves are going to do in the room. But you can make lots of different spaces sound good with lots of different setups. For me, the last two studios I've had have been in rooms like this. This is above my garage. So the ceilings are sloped. It's a mostly rectangular shaped room with sloped ceilings. On the short ends of the room, one side has the window and the air conditioner unit. It's the only air that I have in the studio. The other side has the stairway going down to the rest of the house and up to the attic. I don't really have a place to put my big studio desk. I don't want to block the window and the air conditioner. I also don't want to block the stairway. And I'm also thinking about these sloped ceilings and how they're going to affect the sound. And I've just decided that this position, where even though I'm on like the wrong side of the room, is going to work okay, because from a practical standpoint, I don't want it over there, and I certainly don't want it blocking the stairs. Tip number 2, the acoustic treatment order of operations. Acoustic treatment matters. The acoustics of your room matter because the sound is going to be bouncing around the room, and as that's happening, that can interfere with your ability to get a good, clean recording or to be able to hear your speakers accurately enough to get a good mix. So typically, some amount of acoustic treatment is a good idea. Now, you can pay thousands of dollars to a professional to come in, measure your room, put together a custom design acoustic treatment plan for your space. If you've got the money and the will to do that, go for it. However, for most folks, even just a few pieces of treatment can make a big difference and at least take care of some of the biggest problems to give you a fighting chance at getting good recordings and mixes. For me, that order of operations, if you were to say, I can only do one thing, and then I'll tell you what that is. And then if you can only do 2 things, I can tell you what that is. In that order of kind of most important to least important, I would go like this: floor, sides, front, and rear. So the floor of your space actually is an easy win to help with some of the problems in your room. If you're in a floor with like concrete floor, hardwood floors, any kind of hard surfaced flooring, tile flooring, you're going to have a really hard time getting anything to not just sound really echoey in the space. While a lot of people think about treating the sides, the walls, and even the ceiling, the floor is an easy place to treat. Why? Because you can just slap a rug on it, or you can get it carpeted. In my last several studios, I've had carpet the entire room of the studio. And then a couple that were either hardwood floors or like manufactured flooring, I would get a couple of rugs to basically make the entire floor an absorptive surface. Now, this doesn't mean that it's perfectly absorbing everything, but if you go into a blank room with no carpet and you put in some carpet, you will automatically start to hear changes in how echoey the room is. So that's actually my first place that I think about when I'm setting up treatment is how can I don't want a completely dead space, but an easy way to give a good chunk of deadening to your space is just have a nice carpet on the floor or a bunch of rugs. Second order of operations for me is the sides, specifically to left and right of the mix position. As I'm sitting here, either recording, but especially mixing, the sound is coming out of my speakers, it's going up to the ceiling, it's going down to my desk and the floor, and it's going to the sides, to the walls, to the left and right of the speakers. Those side spots are especially tricky if you don't have something there to absorb those frequencies so it doesn't bounce off the sidewalls and hit your ears a little bit later than the direct signal from the speakers, which, by the way, just causes you to not hear things very accurately. You end up with kind of a weird stereo image, and you end up just hearing more room than speaker. So for me, I've got a couple of gobos that I had built years ago, and a gobo is just a fancy term for a big standing thing of absorption. You can use it during recording, which I do, but for the most part, mine live to the left and right of my speakers, and they act as absorbers, getting those first reflections off of the speakers, so I'm hearing much more of just the speakers and less of the speakers bouncing around the room. Now, you may think, well, what about the ceiling? Well, in my situation, because the ceilings are sloped, the sound goes up, it hits the ceiling, and it's going to bounce over my head and back here. And if it makes it all the way to the far wall, which of course it does, it's going to hit that sloped ceiling and go down into that blue couch and into the carpet. So I end up not really needing I could put treatment here, but that's not the most important place. For me, if I had to put it one spot, give me some carpet. Second spot, give me something to left and right of the speakers. I can bring it in tight if I need to. I can make a little triangle here with that treatment to give myself a little room within a room with little reflection as possible. You can do a lot with just a couple of pieces of treatment, preferably a gobo that you can move around to get the sound that you need. And then if you have time and the ability, putting some treatment behind the speakers. I've got some bass traps along the corners of the walls back behind here, just on the floor behind, out of the way, absorbing some low frequencies. And then last but not least, I'll put some on the backside walls or on the rear. If I had just a flat wall here that was bouncing sound straight back to me, I'd put absorption back there. Tip number 3, set up your command center. As you can see from most of my videos, I tend to try to have, even though this room is fairly big, I try to have as much music-making equipment within arm's reach of me as possible. I keep a few guitar stands here next to me at my desk. I've got the keyboards here that I can reach. I've even got my fairly new Helix guitar amp processor right at my feet, so I can plug things in and start recording as soon as possible. One goal you can set for yourself is set up your studio in such a way that you can start recording and working on music within 60 seconds of walking into the room. If you have to pull out your keyboard and set it up and plug it in and move things around and grab all your guitars and plug things in and get out your guitar pedals, if you have to do that every time you're going to make music, guess what? That friction might be enough for you to say, nah, I'm just going to go watch Netflix, right? So if you want to feel more motivated to create, have a space where you can plop yourself down and start creating very quickly. So for me, that means having a microphone here at all times. If nothing else, I could sit down and start singing a vocal or grab my acoustic guitar, play and sing and come up with a good idea. Spread out from there, I can have my keyboard set up and ready to go. I can have some guitars within reach. I keep all the guitars over there, but I can bring the two that I want to work on for this project, sit them in some stands here, plug them into the Helix down there. I've got everything ready to go. I can hear and listen. Make sure you have headphones nearby. And suddenly you're in a spot where within 60 seconds to 2 minutes of walking into your studio, you can be actively working on something. It's a small thing, but I found personally, removing that bit of friction does wonders for my productivity when it comes to making music. All right, there you go. Those are my 3 tips. I'd love to hear your tips for setting up studios. What did I miss? What do you do that helps you make great music in your home studio? Leave a comment below and let us know. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Pretty please. There's a lot of great stuff on this channel I don't want you to miss. And if you want a free production course, head over to homestudiocorner.com/UP for understanding production. You'll get free access to one of my production courses that I used to sell for several dollars. It's available to you now for free. Check it out. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.